I just think Jim Schwartz has to come in and curtail, hey, Greg, what are you most comfortable doing? Oh, you like to be an outside? Let's get you rocking and rolling there. Sign a single high free safety or draft one who's a center fielder type for your cover three. Get Grant Delpit. If you keep John, get those guys in weird, close to the line of scrimmage, different exotic rules. You want to play more man? John can cover tight ends. He's done it before. He used to give George Kittle fits in San Francisco, covering him one-on-one. And I don't know if they keep John. They might move him on because they really like Grant Delpit. I do too. But like, I just would like Jim, and I hope that we're talking about this midseason if you and I link up. Oh, man, he's really figured out how to put guys in the position to succeed. Oh, listen, Perry on.
After the season, I like to bring on people to help assess what happened in the year, assess what the plan's going to be for the future. And this is a guy I bring in pretty regularly, Jake Burns with the OBR. Jake, how's everything going with you, man? How are you enjoying the offseason so far?
Quincy, is more relaxing to an extent. I guess you're still going to see some nonsense. We're still going to have conversations that we probably shouldn't be having about things that are abundantly obvious, but there's less Sunday occupation. A little more free time, a little more loose calendar, and that's always a welcome thing. I'm sure you would agree after a long season. So I'm okay, hanging in there, man. How are you?
I love the observations during the playoff season of like, oh, this game happens, and then somebody's like, oh, man, how far do you think the Browns are to this? It's like the Bengals had the 5th pick in the draft 2 years ago. Oh, yeah, so man. The right player can really change things quick. I mean, like, look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were playing last weekend, and they were objectively terrible last year with Urban Meyer and everything else that was going on down there. But this Browns team's interesting because they're one of those teams where if you look at the roster, you look at everything on it, you wouldn't be surprised that this team turned it around, figured something out, had a good year this year, this upcoming year. Free agency is going to be a little bit interesting. I kind of brought this up with Jack yesterday because the team is in a new spot that they haven't been in, I mean, like ever, like, because they have never had a quarterback with this level of contract in there. If you're Andrew Berry, what are the new things to get adjusted to when it comes to building a team around this contract versus what you have been doing, which is building a team around a rookie contract quarterback?
Yeah, I think that what you're looking to do first and foremost, I think you talked to Jack Duffin about this, I'm sure yesterday, you got to find ways to open up money, right? Can't do anything unless you open up money. And there are paths to how they can open up that money. They're going to restructure. They're going to probably cut a couple guys, but they first have to find the flexibility. Now I would imagine, sitting in their office and going through the things that they're going through, understand what money is available, right? They know they need to restructure this, that, and the other. They know they need to cut. They got the plan. We don't know the plan. They got the plan, obviously. I'm sure they know how to get there. But to your point, it's an interesting predicament, right? They want to be frugal with how they structure some contracts, and they want to be frugal with how they work their draft picks, but they also are in a bit of a win now, right? So they're trying to balance this desire, this need to win right this second, and know that, Kevin can't come out and have a rough start to the season, like they can't have these issues to start the year that they've had in the past and feel comfortable. So like, I think that both of those guys are comfortable, but I think if they started rough, it would probably lead to some uncomfortable moments. So they know that they need to go out and get results right away, but you're also walking in a delicate balance of, we also need to look to the future. We need to draft replacements. You were talking ahead of the show here with me about offensive line. Like, I really think they're going to draft an interior O lineman. Like they need one that is not a scrap heap type of guy. Like, they need one to develop. And they're going to keep an eye on the future while trying to go out and fix some needs right now. But you're also, as you would agree, I'm sure, back against the wall because you don't have a first round pick. So you got to really make effective use of the picks that you do have. And they go, unfortunately, again, they go 42 all the way to 99. So there's a big gap, only 2 top 100 picks. So they're going to have to be smart. I'm sure they're going to have to hit the trade market. They're going to have to do some smart things of taking positions of strength and potentially moving those guys from the strength to help out an apparent weakness in some other spots. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So it's going to be exciting to see how they go about it.
Yeah, and one of the things we brought up was they might go interior offensive line. I want to touch about this Nick Harris kind of versus Ethan Posick situation where I don't even know if it's that simple, because even if you do decide, hey, we're not going to go back to Ethan Posick, it's not necessarily like Nick Harris is under contract for a very long time. I think this next season is his last year under his deal. He's on a 4-year rookie contract. And even if you don't re-sign Posick, or if you do, that would be, I mean, you already have one of the most expensive offensive lines of football. You're going to be adding to that. Or you can go with the cheaper route, which is Nick Harris, who we don't know what we're going to get out of him. We hope that he's going to be good, but we still don't know, coming out of a knee injury and everything else. And then also, it's not like that's a long-term solution. That's a 1-year thing, because if he plays well, needs to re-sign, I'm thinking they're probably going to look a different direction with that. And do you think center is definitely one of those positions they're going to look at? I think guard is also something they're going to have to be open to as Bitonio gets older. And Wyatt Teller has been inconsistent at times here throughout the last couple of years. I think that's something they could look at too. What do you feel about those two spots?
Yeah, I think Teller is an interesting case because he's obviously dealing with coming back from his calf strain last year, and he didn't play well when he returned, and it was very inconsistent. And again, I keep referencing Jack, but he's a guy with us at the OBR who does such a good job with the salary cap. He was looking at the Browns have 7 players under contract on the offensive side who are set to make $10 million as an APY number. Like that double-digit per year number, it's a big number. While there's no other team giving out more than 5, and especially looking at the conference championship teams, no team giving more than 5. So the Browns are unique in that they're paying a lot of people right now. And Teller is an interesting case because he's one of the few contract types that they could move off of, maybe potentially trade him to get off of that money and then draft a replacement, play him. But again, they want to use this offensive line, it feels like to me, Quincy, for 2 years of all-in nature. Teller, Bitonio, Conklin, and then the 2 years of Jedrick Wills if they pick up his 5th-year option. Now, the center stuff is interesting, right? Postage is probably gone. I cannot see them forking out any more money to the line outside of a rookie contract. So are you drafting one? I've put out some mocks. I'm doing one every day at the OBR, these 7-round mocks, and I'm looking at these guys. Like took Joe Tittman, a guy from Wisconsin in today's mock, who I think is a really fun interior player. Usually Browns get O-lineman from Wisconsin. It's got a good track record, right? So, it's an interesting sort of predicament. Now they have Michael Dunn. They have guys who I think could play center. They obviously played Yodi Froholt there last year. If they don't feel like Nick Harris is ready, obviously coming back from an ACL as an O-lineman is a big deal. A lot of anchoring, a lot of torque on knees, especially if you watch Nick. He is a hopping protection guy, so he likes to hop brace, and that puts a lot of torque on the knee. So it gets a little interesting there for him. I don't know how quickly he comes back and how effective he is. So I'm certainly looking at, can I draft a guy in the 5th, 6th, 7th who we feel has positional flexibility in there and we think can be a downline step-in player for Joel, Wyatt, or be able to play right away for Nick? So yeah, I think it's a sneaky need to be blunt.
Yeah, and the offensive line in general, I think, is something that's probably going to have to be adjusted just to be a little bit more sustainable there. When I watch like Kyle Shanahan, one of the things that's interesting, he's been doing that system so long, he's been running those kind of offenses so long that he kind of has like a template of like, I need a dude here, I need like 2 skill guys that are legit dudes, and then I can deal with the rest. It's gonna be interesting to see Kevin come up with his formula if he gets enough time here to figure it out. Because I think that's also something that's underrated when it comes to player development, when it comes to just drafting the right players, which, a lot of drafting the right players is the player development, right? Like, it's not a coincidence that teams that have had the same staffs for a while draft better players. It's not because they're making like the best decisions possible. It's because they're able to say, this guy can do this. I need him to do this in this defense or offense. And then we're going to teach him how to do this because we know how to do it, because we've been teaching guys to do this for like 8-10 years. That's what happens in Pittsburgh. It's why they have a bunch of solid players that are pretty good, but they leave Pittsburgh there, or same thing. Like, it used to be notorious with New England, right? Where the guy would be good in New England, you get him in free agency, turns out he's not that good, or not that good at what you want him to do. Hey, I don't know what the name of that. It's like the Belichick effect, where it's like that happens a lot, and that happens because Belichick knows the system. He knows, hey, I just need this guy to do two things, and that's all I'm going to teach him. Just do two things. And I think we kind of overlooked that when we're like, we got to replace this guy and fire this guy because we're not getting the best talent possible. Part of getting the best talent possible is just having consistency in the building. And then the scouting will follow that, because how can you scout if you don't have a template? And that's what this franchise has been doing for like 20 years.
And you're giving up on them too early, right? The old phrase, you're flushing out the system. And when you flush the system, some of the fish go with it that you want to develop those guys, right? So if you're fluctuating coaching staffs, you're fluctuating GM thought processes, your scouts are turning over all the time, you don't get the development of relationships, you don't get the consistency of traits that you're looking for at certain positions, and then you get a new guy who comes in who doesn't want that type of player, you let that type of guy go. Think Jordan Poyer. There are many examples of this, and then you're watching them go somewhere else and find.
Is still out there.
Playing really well for San Fran. Like there's so many examples. I mean, like DeMario Davis, people forget that young man was in Cleveland
4 years.
They let him go. Like, so, I mean, we could probably make our listeners here really frustrated with the list, but like, that's what you struggle with is when you don't commit to, this is how we play edge. This is the way we're looking for bend. We're looking for speed to power. With linebackers, we're looking for guys who can take on shed blocks and get to the ball. With corners, we're looking for guys who can shock at the line of scrimmage and then play, bail cover 3 technique off of it. Those are traits. Like if you're constantly shuffling traits in and out, you're going to let go of talented guys that are going to go find the right system for them. And more often than not, you're going to be frustrated. So it's not a perfect system. Consistency for consistency's sake is not great. It's not a perfect answer, I guess, is the thing. But what you have to do is first identify the people you think understand what they should be doing, how they should be scouting, how they should be acquiring. I think they really do have that with Kevin, and they have that with Andrew, and they have that with the core group of their guys. Now they just need to be given some time to make it all come together. But I think you would agree it's a weird situation right now where they're going to need to win quickly to anchor in everything. But again, like it's hard in the NFL to find people that even have the right message, the right theories, the right thought processes, let alone giving them the time. I think they have those people in place. But again, it's social pressure. They got to win. So I hope that happens for the sake of, like, if they get another winning season under their belt, they will have some long-term stability here. And I do think the right people are in place to make that work. And again, Quincy, we talk about why they hired Jim Schwartz. You got to understand that Jim Schwartz is running a very structural. There are differences in thought processes and philosophy inside why 9-4-3 that they run, but it's very similar to structurally, again, I don't want to freak anyone out, what Joe Woods did, and that's why they like the seamless nature of bringing him in. He teaches it differently. He has different intricacies of how he runs it, but the personnel is not wildly different, right? So that's what you're looking to do is consistency and how the types of players we're looking for and how we go get them and where we find them is why places like New England and Pittsburgh and Baltimore and those teams that we're seeing thrive over long term, like Seattle, still finding a way after Russell Wilson because they've been with a similar approach with Pete Carroll. It does have some long term positives here, and I think you would agree with me, and I hope most people would too, that having the Browns find that would be really refreshing because I do think it would lead to long term success. I really do.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Like I remember when I visited Pittsburgh and Baltimore's camp, one of the things that was interesting was like everybody knows the plan for certain players, right? Where it's like, oh, this guy, he's going to start in 2 years, and this guy, he's going to start for this year, and then this guy's contract's going to be up. So then we're going to put this guy in here and there and there and there. And there's always like a plan for everybody they draft to eventually replace somebody. And then you're in Cleveland camp, and it's like, hey, if this rookie doesn't start, I don't know what to do with him. You know what I mean? And it's that difference of like, okay, they've done this for a long time. That's why they hit more often because it's like they're not asking too much early, and it's like also they know exactly what they're asking their players to do and what they want to have out of them. Or we're not having these conversations of, can he convert to a 3-4 or 4-3? Like every year we did that with Jabal Sheard. Blast from the past, Jabal Sheard. But that's another guy that kind of got let go, played better football outside of Cleveland, right?
Agba is another one too. It's there are so many guys around the league that are like that. But you're right, man. Like Pittsburgh able to go get a guy like a great example is Alex Highsmith. They let Bud Dupree walk, who they drafted, played 5 years in Pittsburgh, let him walk, and they bring in Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith had like 15 sacks. He had a ridiculous year in his third year at Charlotte. Like they identify the right pieces. Now they're not perfect, right? Like they traded for Minka. They'll go out and trade up for Devin Bush. Like it didn't work out, but they'll plug things different ways. And the same with Baltimore. They went out and traded for Roquan Smith because Patrick Queen hasn't been as good, but like, what you're looking to do is fit molds, and then from those molds, you can more often than not get guys to play name 3 DBs outside of Minka Fitzpatrick in Pittsburgh. Good luck, but they play good enough coverage, right? Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Like the thing,
same thing as Cincinnati.
That's exactly right. That they have. You just got to find guys who can play roles. You don't need guys who are 95s on Madden. You need guys who are very tailored, specific to the traits the system needs, and that comes from stability. It really does.
And that's one of the things I want to talk about with Jim Schwartz walking into the situation. It's interesting because like all the star playing, like you have all the star power you need on defense, right? You got Miles, you got Denzel, you potentially you have stuff there with JOK to where, hey, if you get him right, he could be a star level player. We saw stuff from Martin Emerson. We've seen stuff from Greg Newsome. Like there's the talent is there. You have the higher overalls on Madden, right? But what the issue is just figuring out what works for these guys and what can make what can avoid these guys having catastrophic breakdowns in the middle of the game. Because I was watching the tape, I was like, oh, they had another catastrophic breakdown against Pittsburgh, week 18. Yep. You know what I mean? Like that's I think what Jim Schwartz is there to do, and I think that's why it's important. Like his resume is his resume. Like, you know, I've said this a lot. I don't know if I've ever said this with you, but I'm like, I don't really think they need a genius at defensive coordinator. They just need competence. And when I look at Jim Schwartz, I'm like, his resume screams competence. He's been a DC for forever. You know, he came up, I think he gets tagged as a Belichick guy. He's really like a Jeff Fisher disciple.
When you look at, like, long time he spent there. In Tennessee.
And so he's like kind of that Jeff Fisher disciple kind of thing. And he's like, most Belichick guys don't really run wide 9. It's like usually like a 3-4 or some kind of hybrid. But it's interesting that they're getting him. You know, I think what's also important too is like nobody really wants to hire Jim Schwartz as their head coach, so you have a chance at just being able to have him. I think LA did this with like Wade Phillips, like one of those over the hill head coaches that are still pretty good coordinators.
Yeah, it's like Spagnuolo with Andy Reid, like the guy who anchors that side, the CEO of that side. That's what you want. And to your point there, yep.
Yeah. And I think it's important that they did that because the things that they need to figure out on the defense is that connective tissue. Because you have the stars, you need the stuff in between there, right? Figure out how to get Perion Winfrey to be more consistent and play better or whatever, right? The thing with Jim Schwartz is he's probably seen somebody similar to a Perion Winfrey in his career. He's been around forever, right? That's what I think is really important when things are going to come up. And I think I compared these two to cars, the two defensive coordinators. Like Joe Woods' defense felt like a sports car, where it was super fast and super exotic, and sometimes like when it works, it's great. Like, I mean, there were a couple times this year where they played great defense and it was like, wow, where's this team been all my life? Mm-hmm. But it don't take much to have that thing break down and be in the shop for a couple of weeks. Where with Jim Schwartz, I feel like he's like a pickup truck where it's like, it's not going to blow you away or anything, but it's going to be there. And he's been around long enough to where if something pops up in the middle of the year, we're not going to be scrambling around. He's probably ran into that problem before, and he probably has a plan to fix that problem. So that's, I think, why they went with that hire. It made a lot of sense in that direction, was like, you just need somebody who can hold it down and you trust to be more consistent. And I think that's probably why they went with him over like a Desai or somebody who might have been more exciting. But ultimately, I don't think they got time for a slow start, right? Like, I think that factors in there too. It's like, hey, we need somebody to get this ready by September.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements you're talking about there that are factual, and I think you have come on my pod and said something similar, that they don't need a genius to fix it, and I really don't think they do. What they need, and listen, we're outside of the whole thing, and we don't know totally what's going on behind closed doors. What we do know is where Joe Woods came from, San Francisco, predicated on a front that is so deadly that it just makes the back half of your secondary's job so easy. Again, I'll challenge you. Name 3 secondary players outside of Tashawn Gibson in San Francisco. It's a very hard challenge. They're not big names, but they create so much chaos with their front, and they're coached so well on the back half in terms of, like, there's 2 things, Quincy, in my opinion. You're either really exotic in the back half of your defense, or you're really exotic in the front half of your defense. It's simple in the other that you don't, because you don't want to be too confusing in both elements, because it makes coaching and the message getting across really hard. So I expect the Browns to do some exotic things in coverage, keep the front really simple, and go after people and throw in some blitzes. So, like, the Browns are clearly, if you come from San Francisco with Joe Woods, where the front is the group causing the chaos, making your job as the pass game coordinator, which is what Joe was in San Fran before coming over, the easier role. The Browns aren't really built that way. They have spent an abundance of resources on the secondary. They've almost built back forward. So what's interesting to me is you have to use that as your strength then. Create situations where your guys are really good in the back half. Like, for Joe Woods to come in and say, I was fine with the defensive tackle situation. Like, really? You were fine with that based on where you came from? And I don't know who to blame for some. Maybe Joe behind you gets some beer in him and he talks candidly. He says, I hated that. I didn't want that. That was against what I wanted. And, the John Johnson signing is a great example too, where he was a great player for LA. If you go look at his tape at LA, and I put out a huge article when they signed him because I was so pumped, man. Like, he could play split, he could play down, he could play linebacker, he could play off the edge, he could blitz, he could cover tight ends, man. He's not doing really any of that. He's just being stuck in the back half of the secondary, split and single high all the time. He's not a dynamic athlete, a fluid hips guy, a big long speed player that's a center fielder. And, like, so everybody thinks John Johnson sucks. I think if John Johnson goes and plays somewhere else that fits what he does, he's going to be good again. And, like, that's something that's interesting to me. And I don't know if that's an Andrew Berry issue or a situation that again, Joe Woods doesn't know how to use his guys, but how John could be taken from, hey, he does these 4 things really well in LA, and this is why this dude was so good, to now we're going to put him in his weakest element in Cleveland and say, hey, good luck. Like, that is asinine to me. So, like, again, another example, they take Greg Newsome, a promising rookie corner outside, really good year, and plug him in the slot. And of course, Greg's going to walk the company line, and yeah, I can do it. Greg Newsome just tweeted out like 4 days ago a random Twitter clip somebody put out where he made a great play, and he's outside, and he puts in all caps outside. Like, clearly he wants to be an outside corner. So, like, you're drafting Greg Newsome. You're drafting Martin Emerson, who's an outside off field corner. Like, there's some elements here of, like, what are we drafting and why are we playing people in certain positions? So, like, I don't know if that was a Joe Woods issue. I'm hoping it was, because I really think, Quincy, man, like, JOK, plugging this guy in to just play Will is it's a degradation of his skill set. He should be going. I should be, as a quarterback, stepping up to the line of scrimmage every play. I see Kyle Duggar in New England, and I'm like, that is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to a T. Now, Kyle Duggar's got a little more comfort in deep coverage, but JOK is like an overhang, curl flat, chaos creator. I should have to go up to the line every play and say, where's 28? Got to find him. Got to identify that guy, because if I don't, I'm going to have a problem. He's too gifted. I just think Jim Schwartz has to come in and curtail, hey, Greg, what are you most comfortable doing? Oh, you like to be an outside? Let's get you rocking and rolling there. Sign a single high free safety or draft one who's a center fielder type for your cover 3. Get Grant Delpit. If you keep John, get those guys in weird, close to the line of scrimmage, different exotic rules. You want to play more man? John can cover tight ends. He's done it before. He used to give George Kittle fits in San Francisco, covering him one-on-one. And I don't know if they keep John. They might move him on because they really like Grant Delpit. I do too. But, like, I just would like Jim, and I hope that we're talking about this midseason if you and I link up. Oh, man, he's really figured out how to put guys in the position to succeed. Oh, listen, Perrion, you're not good at anchoring double teams. You're not good, but you can split them. You can split them. Let's have you doing that, because you're asking these guys to do. I just felt like last year, the more removed I get from it, it was really trying to make guys do things they couldn't do. They just couldn't do. And or not even that they couldn't do, it's that they didn't want to do. And it didn't maximize who they are as players. Because again, if you take Greg, you take John, John has found success. You're going to tell me this guy's got 4 years of fantastic play in LA, and now he's just bad in Cleveland. He's just bad. Like, really? He's going to go from covering difficult offenses out in the West Coast and come to Cleveland and he can't cover anybody? Like, that's not how it goes. So that's a part of it to me. Is I'm sure Jim Schwartz is looking at it and Jim could have interviewed and gone a bunch of different places. Not like he had to come to Cleveland. Like, they got real talent here. I can come in here and make a difference. Now, do we got to upgrade DT and we got to do some things here? Yeah, it's not a glove fit. I said it after the season. You fire Joe Woods and you don't change and you don't change any of the defensive personnel, it's not going to get better. If you keep Joe Woods and change the defensive personnel, it's not going to work. They had to do both. They got one done with Schwartz. Now they got to do some personnel tweaks, especially on the interior and like we're talking about a post safety. But those things can be done. And then you got to look at, man, we got some really exciting talent here. Like, there's some, if we get these guys rocking and rolling, to your point just a minute ago, playing with confidence, playing with swagger, playing a connected brand of football on this side of the ball, sky's the limit for this group because the talent is there. They need someone to unlock it, right? Unlock it. And it's there. So I really I might sound like an idiot to some people. I have less fear of the defense being fine than I do of the offense. I really do. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to figure it out. And I think they've just been waiting for someone to come in and figure it out. The offense, I need to see a lot of changes. I really do. And we can dive into that if you want, or that could be another show for another day. But I'm writing a big piece on it at some point in the next 2 months. This offense has to evolve. So I just think defensively, to the point of your question, the pieces are there. I think they have a different leader that can unlock those pieces. Hopefully, you hope. You never want to sit here and tell people hey, it's going to work out, and in 2 years, like, Jake, you're an idiot. What you hope is a fresh perspective. Hey, this is what this guy's good at. Let's put people in the place that they should be all the time and give them the best chance to succeed. I think that's all we're asking for, man.
Yeah, and I think to your point about the offense, right? The defense, it's like you got the players. Like, you have the abundance of players there. It's just, for whatever reason, it's been a mystery. Whatever's been going wrong with that defense, and you just hope that can get fixed. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if that defense got better. You know what I mean? Like, even with Joe Woods, there were times where they were talented enough to play through whatever Joe Woods was having them do.
They're banking on it, Quincy, and they have to be. They've invested too much. They've invested Greg a first round. Denzel's got a first round tag. They paid John handsomely. JOK, they traded up in round 2. Miles, they drafted Perrion. They got Alex Wright. They're spending money over there. They need it to be better. Yeah. And I don't think they make that move without knowing we just need somebody competent to run this, to unlock this, to get a message across, to lead, to hold people accountable. Like, I might be crazy, man, but I don't have fear that this defense is going to be better. I really think it will work out that way for that side of the football.